We're live now, thank you. Before I formally start the meeting, I confirm that this meeting is being held in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003 and the Licensing Act Hearing Regulations 2005, which allow councils to make their own arrangements for the licensing subcommittees to hear matters in connection with premises licenses. I will begin by introducing the subcommittee members and the officers who will be present throughout the meeting. I'm the chair, Councillor Andrews. To my left is Councillor Dave Davis and Councillor Peter Hamlin. To my right is the legal advisor to the committee, Mr. Davies, and clerk to the subcommittee is Mr. Evans, and technical support is Joelle Higgins. Other attendees will be introduced at relevant stages in the meeting. Please note the following points with regard to the conduct of this meeting. The Council is video and audio streaming this meeting live on the internet and making a recording. The recording forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available on the Council's website. Please remember what you say and do in this meeting has a global reach, and your words and actions should be chosen carefully. Please ensure all mobile devices are switched to silent. If any remote attendee loses connection, the meeting will be paused to ascertain if the connection can be restored quickly. If it is not possible to recover the connection with a reasonable amount of time, the meeting will continue. If you plan to leave before the end of the meeting, please can you indicate this in advance. Are there any questions about the procedures before we continue? I should think you all would know it well by now. Thank you. I will now proceed with the formal agenda of the meeting. Any apologies for absence? None. No substitutes? No. Any declarations of interest? No. Right, thank you. We have the first item is the application for a variation of premises licence in respect of Trilogy 51 to 55 Blue School Street, Hereford, HR1 2AR, Licensing Act 2003. The purpose is to consider the application for a variation of the premises licence. In attendance for this application, we have present on behalf of the Licensing Authority, Emma Bowell and Mr. Fred Spriggs, and for the applicant, Mr. Tom Williams and Mr. Semper, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant. Is Mr. Williams there? Yes, thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. The order of speakers will be Miss Emma Bowell on behalf of the Licensing Authority, Mr. Williams, who is the applicant, and then Mr. Semper on behalf of the applicant. Then questions from the subcommittee. Then we will now get started. Emma?
Thank you, Chair. So as Chair rightly said, we're here today to consider an application for a variation for a premise licence in respect to Trilogy 51 to 55 Blue School Street, Hereford. Recommendations to the subcommittee are that they determine the application with a view to promote the licensing objectives in the overall interest of the local community. They should give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote those licensing objectives, representations including any supporting information presented by all parties, the guidance issued to local authorities under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, and the Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025. And the reasons for these recommendations: it ensures compliance with the Licensing Act 2003. There are a number of options open to the subcommittee today. One would be grant the licence subject to conditions that are consistent with the operating schedule. Two would be to grant the licence subject to modified conditions of that of the operating schedule. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates to. To refuse to specify a person in the licence as a premises supervisor, which is not applicable today, or to refuse the application. The application for variation of a premises licence has received relevant representation and is therefore brought before the subcommittee today for determination. Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025 states all representations must be relevant. For example, they must be about the likely effect of the grant of the application. And this follows paragraph 8.57 in the Section 182 guidance, which uses the same wording. At the time of the report being published, the applications were as follows. The applicant was Epic Bars Hereford Limited. The agent was Woods Were 2014 Limited. The date received of the application was the 29th of July 24. The 28-day consultation started on the 30th of July 24 and ended 28 days later on the 26th of August 24. However, since the report has been published on the 27th of September, we received, as the licensing authority, a transfer of the premises licence that went from Epic Bars to Church Farm Hospitality Limited. Therefore, the applicant, as stated at paragraph 4 of the report, is no longer Epic Bars Hereford Limited. And the agent is no longer Woodsworth 2014 Limited. The agent today with the licensing guys. The application at Appendix 1 requests a variation of a premise licence to allow the following licensable activities. To vary the start time of all licensable activities and opening hours to start at midday. These include films, live music, recorded music, performance of dance, anything similar to live recorded music, performance of dance, and the sale and supply of alcohol. The application also seeks to vary the condition, which reads, the premises use PET glassware for wines, spirits and draft beer throughout, except the Botanic Bar where toughened glass will be used. The new condition seeks, the premises use PET glassware for wines, spirits and draft beer throughout, except Botanic Bar where glass vessels can be used up to 1 a.m. A copy of the current licence is found at Appendix 2 and authorises films, Tuesday 7 p.m. until 3:30 a.m, Wednesday to Monday 8:30 p.m. until 3:30 a.m. Live music, recorded music, performance of dance, anything similar, and sale and supply of alcohol, Monday to Sunday 6:30 to 3:30 in the morning, late night refreshment 11 p.m. until 3:30 in the morning. Non-standard timings ask for an additional hour to the terminal hour of all licensable activities on certain days of the year and is set out in the report. The licence is also subject to conditions that promote the licensing objectives. A representation was received from West Mercia Police as the responsible authority, and the condition requested has been agreed by the applicant, who was Epic Bars at the time, and their agent, and that's found at Appendix 3. An objection was received from the local authority as a responsible authority and can be found at Appendix 4. The basis of the objection was that over the past weekends, the principal licensing officer observed that the main entry at Trilogy was not used and the only entrance point was the Botanic. Trilogy is a late night venue and operates as a nightclub and therefore is a higher risk premises than Botanic, which is more of a cocktail bar. The principal licensing officer attended a site visit on Thursday the 5th of September. From that site visit, a further condition was agreed with Epic Bars and Woodsworth regarding the use of glass at the premises, and their objection was withdrawn, and that can be found at Appendix 5. One relevant representation was received from a member of the public on behalf of residents in Catherine Street and Catherine Court, which is in the vicinity of the premises, that the licensing authority accepted as being relevant and can be found at Appendix 6. The representation is in relation to noise nuisance at the premises. The licensing authority accepted that representation as being relevant due to the fact Botanic and Trilogy come under one premises licence and not separate ones. A little bit of premises history. The premises were licensed until December 2020 when the premise licence holder became insolvent. Therefore, the premise licence lapsed immediately. The premise licence was first licensed as Play Nightclub in 21 on this premise licence before you today. In August 23, the premise licence was transferred to Epic Bars Hereford Limited, and at the time of the report was the current premise licence holder. In October 23, the premise changed its name to Trilogy. Since being licensed as Trilogy, the licensing authority has received two variations, not including the one before you today. One in October 23, which is not granted as it did not comply with advertising regulations, and one in November 23, which is granted in December 23 with some added conditions from Environmental Protection. Since December 23, the authority has granted one minor variation and 3 applications to vary the designated premises supervisor, and that was at the time of the report being written. Any decision may have an impact on the local community. There are environmental impacts, equality duties, and legal implications set out in this report, which your legal advisor can advise you on further. There are unlikely to be any financial implications for the Council as a licensing authority at this time. There is a right of appeal to Magistrates' Courts within 21 days of the decision being served on the applicants. There is little risk associated with the decision at this time as the legislation allows for that right of appeal to Magistrates' Court. All responsible authorities and members of the public living within Herefordshire have been consulted. Appendices 1 to 6 are found at the back of this report, along with the 2 supplements that were produced last night. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emma. Now, Mr. Williams is going to speak next. I understand, Mr. Williams, you only taken over the licence in a fairly short time.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Not great to be man, but I'll be presenting on behalf of Mr. Williams, so you may have some questions to put to him afterwards.
Mr. Williams, have you anything to say first?
Not at this time, no.
Right, okay, then we'll... Mr. Semper.
Good morning, everybody. I am Nick Semper from the Licensing Guys, and we're representing applicant here today, being Church Farm Hospitality Limited, and here in the presence of Tom Williams. Now, he's well known in his city. He's 15 years experience of running premises and has been operating Hogarth's in Commercial Road for several years with zero issues. Now, you all know Trilogy, play as was, so this cornerstone of the Hereford nighttime economy needs no introduction. However, what you may not be aware is that, well, in fact, you have been made aware because Epic Bars transferred it, they've run it for several years, and they were the initial applicants through Woods were, but the license transferred on Friday of last week, and hence you have us appearing before you today. So the application is to vary the start time for all licensable activities and opening hours to midday, and to allow the use of ordinary glass receptacles in Botanic Bar. I point out there's no intention to open Trilogy at 12 o'clock every day of the year, but we simply wish the facility to do so as and when required. Now, not one of the responsible authorities objected to our change of hours. As the experts in licensing in Herefordshire, I believe you can therefore draw great comfort from the fact that none of them raised any objections, as had this prospect raised any likelihood of the licensing objectives being undermined, then surely they would have done as is their statutory duty. Now, there was some nervousness regarding the relaxation around glassware. Mr. Spriggs for the Licensing Authority engaged with Woods were, and following the necessary and successful negotiations, he wrote to the solicitors on the 9th of September stating that he withdrew his representation as a condition had been agreed, and that is before you. Similarly, West Mercia Police do not object to this application. However, they made a representation regarding the use of PET glassware for wine, spirits and draft beers throughout the premises except the Botanic Bar area, and that too has been agreed and is before you. Now, we've got one objection from members of the public, that's Mr. Lee Bainham. He submitted an objection seemingly on behalf of himself and the other residents of Catherine Street and Catherine Court. These are helpfully grouped into categories but come under the licensing objective of the prevention of public nuisance. He cites loud music and vibration after 9:30 at night, preventing residents from opening their windows. This noise escapes from fire exits left open during themed events, and which also allows persons to enter and exit the premises unhindered. The rubbish in the back car park is not stored properly, leading to overspills into the street. Staff members using the back car park are inconsiderate, revving their cars, playing loud music and shouting to each other. Lastly, the front of the venue becomes highly congested on the pavements with revellers and staff, creating an uncomfortable and potentially dangerous situation. Okay, that's a summary of what he's telling us. Okay, so the first thing to observe is that these problems lie within, the problems as alleged, I should point out, lie within the nighttime economy. But this extension seeks to bring the hours forward, not later into the night, but forward to lunchtime, in order that these premises can operate like virtually every other licensed premises in the county. So we're not asking to extend hours further into the night time when noise nuisance from premises would be a prevalent consideration whatsoever. Secondly, on reading this rep, as the new owner, Mr. Williams was horrified. He had no idea that the previous operators had allowed these behaviours to occur during their tenure, and immediately set about putting it right. Okay, Mr. Needs from the licensing guys spent several days down at the club working with a new manager, ensuring that compliance and control measures are now in place to ensure that the behaviours complained of cease forthwith. The fire exit will now remain closed. Rubbish will be properly stored, stowed and disposed of. Staff have been strongly advised regarding their use of the staff car park, and the door team have been directed to proactively manage the queues and disposal from the premises at all times, as they did in the days of Mr. Gershel when he ran play. All householders have been written to by Mr. Williams, acknowledging what has happened under the previous management regime and providing them with A, his personal guarantee that they will not be repeated, and B, a number to call 24/7 were there to be any problem under his watch going forward. A copy of that letter has been submitted as additional information. He's also meeting Mr. Bainham in 2 days to discuss these problems going forwards. So I hope from the immediate grip and pace of Mr. Williams's response that you are reassured that he has gripped these issues and gripped these issues immediately, and that there will be no reoccurrence. Again, as an aside, I'd respectfully point out that this is an application for a variation of a premises licence under Section 42 of the Licensing Act and not a review. Clearly, Parliament's already provided a mechanism to deal with any present or future problems emanating from licensable activities provided by Section 51 of the Licensing Act 2003. So were you to vary this licence and problems were to ensue, and Mr. Williams and I are assuring you that they will not, then the mechanism to control them is self-evidently provided by the aforementioned Section 51 process. Okay, so in summary then, this hearing is simply about whether this new and highly experienced operator, against whom you've heard nothing to his detriment, operating this established and valued venue within these extended hours into the daytime, in accordance with this operating schedule, supported by the comprehensive raft of conditions agreed with Mr. Spriggs and the police, whether this will undermine or promote the licensing objectives. Very clearly our position, it will not undermine them. Consequently, I respectfully request that you do indeed grant this variation as sought, and you wish Tom every success going forward with his newly acquired Trilogy nightclub. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Semper. I understand they're going to show films. What sort of films?
Tom, if you want to pick up on that, it's on the pre-existing licence, ma'am. But I don't know if Tom's got any intention of showing films at this moment. Can you help us there, Tom?
You're muted, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, sorry, no, yeah, my apologies there. No, we certainly don't have any intention to show any films on the premises at this point.
And from what Mr. Semper said, you're very happy, since you've only just taken over the licence, you're very happy to abide by all the conditions agreed by the previous licence holders.
I am indeed, yes.
And it's nice to hear that you're going to speak to the complainant personally.
Good, yeah, thank you.
Yes. Committee, have you any questions you want to ask? Councillor Davis, Councillor Hamlin?
I don't think so,
No?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Right. We've heard everything that we need to hear. We will now adjourn. What is the time? Just gone 10:15. If you come back at 20 to 11. Oh. Yes. Can the live stream be restarted, please? Thank you very much. Right. The subcommittee's decision is to approve the application with the additional conditions as agreed. Reasons. The subcommittee has taken into account the detailed representation and information presented to the hearing by the Senior Technical Licensing Officer Emma Bowell, Mr. Semper on behalf of the applicant, and Mr. Tom Williams as the applicant. The subcommittee fully recognises the concerns raised by local residents and the reasons why the representations were made. The subcommittee can only consider the application before it and those representations that relate to one or more of the following of the licensing objectives. The subcommittee notes that the West Mercia Police and the Licensing Authority made representations which were accepted by the applicant and that additional licence conditions have been put in place. No further representations were received from the responsible authorities, which includes Trading Standards Department and Environmental Protection, who deal with noise nuisance. The subcommittee has considered the nature of the concerns raised by members of the local community in relation to noise emanating from the venue causing disturbance to local residents, potential for patrons and employees of the premises causing disruption within the community, and the impact on the local area generally. The subcommittee notes the submission made by Mr. Semper and Mr. Tom Williams in support of the licensed premise application and the measures that are being taken to mitigate any potential impact on the local area. The subcommittee is pleased that the applicant is taking steps to engage with the community and is taking firm action to address the concerns. The subcommittee considers that the application made is comprehensive and will promote the licensing objectives. The subcommittee would strongly advise that should the premises licence conditions not be complied with, that the residents inform Herefordshire Council Environmental Health and Licensing Department, as well as other appropriate responsible authorities, so that concerns are properly documented as soon as practicable. Appeal information. Under Schedule 5, Paragraph 4 of the Licensing Act 2003, the applicant or a person who made relevant representations may appeal against the decision. Schedule 5, Paragraph 9 states that such an appeal must be made to the Magistrates' Court within a period of 21 days from the date that the applicant is notified in writing of the decision. Should you wish to appeal this decision, then it is recommended that you obtain your own legal advice or contact the Magistrates' Court at Bath Street, Hereford. Thank you. Right.
So we'll have a quick adjournment whilst we get the next speaker.
Yes, we'll just adjourn for 5 minutes and then you're there for the next one, I gather, Mr. Semper, as well. Right. Is Mr. Semper around? Right. Right. We will start again. This is the application for a grant of a premises licence in respect of Tie Street Food, 7 Bridge Street, Hereford. HR 49DF, Licensing Act 2003. We're considering an application for a grant of premises licence, Tie Street Food, 7 Bridge Street. In attendance for this, we have, on behalf of the Licensing Authority, Emma Bowell and Fred Spriggs, Mr. Chris, who is the applicant, and Nick Semper, who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant. Order of speakers, we'll start with Emma. Mr. Semper, are you going to speak before Mr. Chris or after?
Before, if that's in order, ma'am.
Yes, that's quite all right. I just thought I'd check. Emma.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair rightly said, we're here today to determine a grant of a premises licence in respect of Tie Street Food, 7 Bridge Street, Hereford. And the recommendation to the subcommittee are that it determines the application with a view to promote those licensing objectives in the overall interest of the local community. They should give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote those licensing objectives, representations including any supporting information presented by all parties, the guidance issued to local authorities under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and the Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025 and the reasons for those recommendations that ensures compliance with the Licensing Act 2003. There are a number of options open to the subcommittee today. One would be to grant the licence subject to conditions that are consistent with the operating schedule. B, grant the licence subject to modified conditions to that of the operating schedule. Exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, to refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor, or to refuse the application. The application for grant of a premise licence has received relevant representation and is therefore brought before you today for determination. Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025 states all representation must be relevant. For example, they must be about the likely effect of the grant of the application. This follows paragraph 8.57 in the Section 182 guidance, which uses the same wording. The applicant for today is Can Be The One Limited. The agent is the Licensing Guys. We received the application on the 7th of August 24. The 28-day consultation started on the 8th of August 24 and ended 28 days later on the 4th of September. The application, which can be found at Appendix 1, requests the following. Late night refreshment indoors, Monday to Sunday, 11 p.m. till 2 a.m. Sale and supply of alcohol, consumption on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m. until 2 a.m. The application also states that the sale and supply of alcohol and the alcohol will be only ancillary to food order at all times. The applicant has offered a set of conditions to promote the 4 licensing objectives, and these can be found at Appendix 2. Just a note for everyone here today that late night refreshment is only a licensable activity, Monday to Sunday between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. There are no representations received from any of the responsible authorities in respect of this application. 4 relevant representations have been received from members of the public, which the licensing authority have accepted as being relevant. These can be found at Appendix 3. Representations are based on noise disturbance the objectors would incur, crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour should the licence be granted. Any decision may have an impact on the local community. There are environmental quality duties and legal implications set out in this report that your legal advisor can advise on further. There are unlikely to be any financial implications for the Council as a licensing authority at this time. There is a right of appeal to Magistrates' Court, and that is within 21 days of the decision being served on the applicants. There is little risk associated with the decision at this time, as the legislation allows a right of appeal to that Magistrates' Court within that 21-day period. All responsible authorities and members of the public living within Herefordshire have been consulted, and appendices 1 to 3 are found at the back of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emma. We will now go on to Mr. Semper on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, well, as you're aware, I am Nick Semper from the Licensing Guys, and we're representing the applicant here today, being Can Be The One Limited, and here represented by Chris Sackhorn, Pang Jarrett Sackhall, or Chris for short. Now, by way of background, Bridge Thai Street Food is an established and successful restaurant providing authentic, freshly cooked Thai cuisine to a small volume of only up to around 16 persons to enjoy in the restaurant, for collection to take away, or to be supplied via home delivery. Having an established, loyal and regular clientele, this application is to enable the business to enhance the dining experience, so enabling customers to enjoy alcoholic beverages with their table meal in the restaurant or in the comfort of their own homes with food ordered for delivery. Now, Thai restaurants, by their very nature, do not attract antisocial behaviour per se, and this one is closed before the nightclub's empty. Unlike a chip shop or kebab and burger fast food takeaway, there is very little, if any, passing footfall, whereby people would sit about on benches or walls outside eating chips on their way home. You could buy takeaway chips if you wanted to, but they would cost you nearly £4 per portion. Starters are on average nearly £8 each, and main courses range between £11 and £21. Set meals for two are at least £55. Just the fare provided is from these premises is of restaurant standard and is not fast food entry point by way of pricing. It is therefore consumed by diners at tables inside, or transported home by vehicle, or delivered by delivery courier, or should a customer wish to collect in person, they may do so. Now, as you'll be aware, each application must be judged on its own facts and merits. The significant merits of this application is that it's a quality application for a premises that has operated with a zero footprint with the responsible authorities to date, and has also operated in exactly the same terms as sought in this application on every weekend since the 15th of August this year, under a succession of temporary event notices, not one of which has attracted a single incident, complaint, or even suggestion of problems. Now, in this hearing, the burden is on the applicant to show that the proposed operation, supported by the proposed operating schedule, is capable of promoting the licence and objectives and is unlikely to undermine them. Any representatives opposing the application have the burden to show that this particular premises, trading under the operation schedule before you, will undermine the licence and objectives, and demonstrate that with evidence. In our submission, any subcommittee properly advised could only refuse this application if it is found on the evidence of the representatives to be not capable of promoting the licensing objectives. And you may ask yourself, why do representatives, aka objectors, need to come up with evidence? Well, the answer is found in para 9.43 of section 182 statutory guidance, which clearly states, and I quote, "The authority's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate for the promotion of the licence and objectives, and proportionate to what is intended to achieve." Now, significantly, there's not a shred of empirical evidence in the comprehensive hearing papers before you today which challenges, criticises, or even references the operating schedule of this applicant or the DPS whatsoever. That is an undeniable and self-evident fact. The police are the lead responsible authority and expert and the source of expert evidence on crime, disorder and ASB issues to the licensing authority, to yourself, and there is no representation from them. Similarly, the licensing authority being the lead responsible authority for all licensing matters in Herefordshire, they've made no representation, and neither has any other responsible authority, and I point you particularly to environmental health, being the experts in noise and pollution. They all raise no objection. So, as this hearing is an evidence-based decision-making process, you as a committee cannot be insensible to the fact that not one of the responsible authorities has objected to this application or has presented any evidence against it. You can therefore rightly assume that, in the opinion of all the responsible authorities, this operating schedule does not undermine, but in fact promotes the licensing objectives. Otherwise, they would be here with evidence to vehemently object against it. So we're left with the 4 objections from members of the public. Instead of dealing with each personally and thereby personalising it, I'll break down the arguments raised in each by heading and deal with each in turn. But the overview looks something like this, Chair. The first 3 objections are anonymous. They all begin in the same way, use nearly identical language and phraseology, and are almost carbon copies of each other, most written within 2 hours of each other. As I say, they are anonymous. So we simply have no idea who they come from or their proximity or proximity to or experience of this particular business. I therefore ask the committee to attribute appropriate levels of weight to their evidence. The final objection, I should say, as submitted within the same time frame, it was submitted within the same time frame within those 2 hours, and comes from Mr. Jones, but says it was dictated by his carer, Nina Williams. Now, all four mention noise, nuisance, and crime and disorder in ASB. I can only assume that means that problems will. I can only assume this means that they believe that problems will emanate from clientele of this restaurant were it to be allowed to remain open until 2 o'clock. They explain it's a residential and light office area, and that this kind of business should be located elsewhere in the city. They claim that it will add to issues which have already reached problem levels for the local police. So if you'll allow me to break that down, firstly, Bridge Street already contains numerous licensed premises and others nearby, and I'll list a few of them. Okay, we've got the Black Lion,
It's
Orange Tree.
It's all right, Mr. Semper. We all know Bridge Street pretty well. You don't need to enumerate all the licensed premises and.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm up to about 8, but despite all those other premises, the crime and disorder levels are extremely low. And now I've served on you as an appendix the Home Office data, which confirms that there have only been 5 incidents over the past 6 months of records, averaging at 0.83 incidents per calendar month. That's 1 incident every 36.4 days. And like I say, these premises have been operating until 2 o'clock at weekends since the 15th of August, with 0 issues or complaints from anyone. Secondly, persons calling by on foot to purchase food to eat out accounts for only 1% of the business, as it's primarily a restaurant. Therefore, any disturbance from people sitting around, lounging around outside is highly unlikely. And thirdly, any food taken from this establishment leaves in a bespoke paper box, particular and peculiar to these premises. Were there to be litter issues following any grant of the licence today, then that litter is directly attributable to these premises and the normal corrective actions can be taken accordingly. Therefore, I hope you will conclude, like me, that the likelihood of an increase in any crime, disorder, ASB and nuisance is highly unlikely should you find yourselves able to grant this application today. So I've got to talk to you very, very briefly about fear and speculation. It's referred to in the hearing papers. We've got the para 9.43 says that your decision here today has to be evidence-based. Fear and speculation of problems that might or might not ensue and some undisclosed data in the future emanating from these premises. That's not evidence. That is what it is. It is fear and speculation. And secondly, the licensing officers, the lead and technical officers, principal and lead technical officer have helpfully in the papers directed you towards the case of Thwaites and Wirral Borough Magistrates, where the judgment states that you should be actuated by proper and real evidence. So there is no history of problems with this applicant or his management or their management of these premises, and the potential for any such issues is more than properly addressed in the proposed conditions. And in any event, were there to be problems going forward, the lawful and correct means of dealing with them is via the Section 51 review process, which you are more than well aware of and willing to actuate. So in summary, this hearing is simply about whether this new operator, against whom you've heard nothing to his detriment, operating this quality restaurant, operating these hours in accordance with the operating schedule, which is operated for 6 weeks without issue, including that comprehensive raft of conditions, whether that's going to undermine or promote the licensing objectives. Very clearly, as always, our position is that it will not undermine them. There's no evidence of public nuisance or crime or disorder, or indeed any other cause for concern regarding the promotion of the licensing objectives from this premises or this applicant before you. That again, it is an undeniable and self-evident fact. So consequently, I do again respectfully request that you do indeed grant this application for the premises licence as sought, and you wish this company and Chris before you every ongoing success with this established and successful Thai restaurant. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Semper. Mr. Chris, have you anything you would wish to add to that?
You're on mute. You're on mute, Chris.
You're on mute, Mr. Chris.
He's just sorting it out now, ma'am. Well, it appears.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
there we are.
Hello. Yep. Hello.
So we
Yes.
can.
She's asked. The chair is asking if you've got anything you wish to
Well,
add to what I already told them.
No.
No. Right. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you, Mr. Chris.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, please, to get a slightly better feel for the way that the business is conducted and operated? I think I'm right in saying that there's no bar area. So do we conclude from that then that any alcoholic drinks are waiter served to the table? And can we just confirm the alcohol is currently being served up until 11 o'clock? It's only the period after 11 o'clock that's under today's discussion.
The alcohol has been served in accordance with the TENS, and there is no bar. You're right. It's table service to seated diners inside the restaurant, sir.
Okay, thanks. Just wished to clarify that.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Davis, have you anything you wish to ask?
No, thank you.
Well, I thank you. We will now adjourn. If you'd like to come back at about 11:20. All hear me? Thank you. The subcommittee's decision is to approve the application. The subcommittee has taken into account the detailed representations and information presented to the hearing by the Senior Technical Officer, Emma Bowell, and Mr. Semper on behalf of the applicant. The subcommittee fully recognises the concerns raised by local residents and the reasons why the representations were made. The subcommittee can only consider those representations that relate to one or more of the licensing objectives. The subcommittee notes that there were no representations received from the responsible authorities, which includes the West Mercia Police, trading standards and environmental protection. The subcommittee has considered the 4 representations made by members of the public. The representations relate to antisocial behaviour, damage to property, litter and noise causing disturbance, and nuisance to local residents and businesses. It is raised that there is potential for patrons of the premises causing disruption with the local area generally. The subcommittee notes that 3 of these representations were anonymous and will therefore attach appropriate weight to them in these circumstances. The subcommittee notes the detailed submissions made by Mr. Semper in support of the premises licence application, and note that the premises has operated under TENS for the last 6 weeks without any problems. The committee note the analysis of the representations made against the granting of the application by Mr. Semper and measures that are being taken to ensure that these premises will not impact negatively on the local area. The subcommittee considers that the application made is comprehensive and will promote the licensing objectives. The subcommittee would strongly advise that should the premises licence conditions not be complied with, that the residents inform Herefordshire Council Environmental Health and Licensing Department, as well as other appropriate responsible authorities, so that the concerns are properly documented as soon as practicable. Appeal information. Under Schedule 5, Paragraph 2 of the Licensing Act 2003, the applicant or a person who made relevant representations may appeal against a decision. Schedule 5, Paragraph 9 states that such an appeal must be made to the Magistrates' Court within a period of 21 days from the date that the applicant is notified in writing of the decision. Should you wish to appeal this decision, then it is recommended that you obtain your own legal advice or contact the Magistrates' Court at Bath Street, Hereford. Right. Thank you all very much. And we will,
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We will
Thank
now,
you.